Little trick number 18. Echo their words and then link them to yours. To change the subject, repeat or rephrase the most recent speaker's words or idea. Then tie it to yours. If you include or allude to what someone else just said, people won't even notice that you've changed the topic. Of course, there are many times when you should not change the subject, no matter how boring it is for you. How to know when to never change the subject. One of my consulting clients instituted a new inventory control system and gave the entire company training on it. Nevertheless, months later, most of the employees were still stumped. All except one, that is, a quiet, nice guy geek named Gunter. During one of the company's casual round-table meetings, the CEO announced that Gunter had graciously offered to coach anyone who needed extra help on the new system. As Mr. Santos continued singing his praises, I peeked at Gunter. He was self-consciously looking at his lap, but I could tell he was bursting with pride, reveling in his boss's compliment. Santos continued, "I'm sure everyone is already grateful to Gunter. Several people have told me that whenever they had any trouble with their computer, Gunter would drop whatever he was doing and—" Before Santos could finish his sentence, however, one of the other employees jumped in with, "Well, some of the positions where the new computers have been put aren't really convenient. For instance—" While the interrupting employee, Devon, droned on, the rest of Gunter's compliment was forgotten. By all except Gunter, that is. He had been savoring his verbal kiss until a man with a mental myopia cut his kudos short. If Devon had had one trickle of EP running through his veins, he would have never cheated Gunter out of the rest of his well-deserved recognition. Actually, it wasn't Gunter who lost the most that day. Should Devon's computer crash a few weeks later, how rapidly do you think Gunter would rush to his aid? It's not just for compliments. Not switching topics goes for many more situations than just when someone is being praised. Always keep your EP tuned to those around you. If you notice the subject of the moment is extremely enjoyable to anyone in the group, slap on the muzzle. Let's say you, Sarah, and a few others are sitting around someone's living room. The group is discussing Sarah's kids, Sarah's vacation, Sarah's anything else she especially enjoys talking about. No matter how boring the discussion is to you, do not change the subject. Let someone else do it. Sooner or later they will. Let Sarah savor the current conversation until it dies a natural death, or someone else does the dirty changing the subject deed. Predict Sarah's displeasure if the subject abruptly gets changed, and her displeasure with the person who changed it. Little trick number 19. Never change a subject that someone else finds special. Never change the subject or leave when you sense the conversation is important or special to someone else in the group. Especially if others are applauding that person, let the last note of their accolade sink in. In fact, don't even be the first person to speak post-compliment. Unless, of course, it is to add your own refrain to their hymn of praise. Not so incidentally, even if you are not part of the conversation, don't leave the room during their thrilling repartee. It's tantamount to walking out on them personally. Part 3. 6 little tricks to actually enjoy parties. How to make friends at a big party. How many times have you heard, and maybe even said, "I hate big parties where I don't know anyone"? Plastered partygoers with lampshades on their heads have sputtered those same words. Even those in the stylish champagne-toasting crowd assert their aversion to big receptions. However, if you ask these same folks if they like intimate little gatherings where the guests know each other, "Oh, that's a different story. Yes, I love those," they say. "They're loads of fun. Awesome." Well, guess what? Even the biggest blowout starts out as a small party. I came upon this astounding verity quite by accident one day when I had to attend a large Sunday afternoon gathering where I didn't know anyone. The invitation said 3 o'clock. Planning to be stylishly late and therefore diminish my discomfort, I arrived at the hostess' doorstep at 3:45 by my watch and rang the bell. "Oh, Lil, do come in," the hostess said graciously, but obviously hiding irritation. Then she told me the last thing a nervous party-goer wants to hear. "You're the first to arrive." Arr! She led me into her huge living room. "Just make yourself comfortable. I'm going to finish a few things in the kitchen." "Yeah, sure, I'll be comfortable, huh?" Looking at her clock on the wall, I was horrified. I had forgotten to set my watch back on this very first day of daylight savings time. It was only 2:45. A few minutes later the doorbell rang. From the foyer I heard the hostess say, "Brent, I'm so happy you could come." A male voice responded, "I apologize I'm here so early. I figured I should get an early start, but there was no traffic coming over." "Oh, it's a pleasure to see you any time," the hostess said. "Let me introduce you to Lil. She was the first one here." Brent and I started chatting, and much to my delight, he and I really hit it off. As other people arrived, I felt like I was attending one of those awesome little gatherings where everybody knows each other. Soon people started coming in droves, and it turned into what I used to call a dreaded bash. This time, however, it was different. I already knew a lot of people, the other early arrivals. If I found myself feeling lonely and lost, I had my new friends, the other early birds, to talk to. Since they introduced me to their friends, like the ripple effect, my circle of acquaintances became larger and larger. And all because I'd forgotten to change my watch. It was a lucky mistake. I will never be fashionably late to a gathering where I don't know people again. Little trick number 20. Be unfashionably early. Every big function starts out as a little affair. So grit your teeth, swallow your instincts, and go early. Be among the first to arrive, and you will meet everybody who's already there. As the party gets bigger, you will have a group of people to hang with, and to introduce you to the other guests. Moms and dads, pay special attention to this part. When Judith McCarthy from McGraw-Hill, the most wonderful editor a writer could ever have, read this, she put one of those comment balloons that editors plaster all over writers' drafts. She wrote, "Lil, this is so true. I once mistakenly went early to a family party with my kids. I sheepishly said to the hostess, 'I guess I'm very early, aren't I?' My kids and her kids played, though, and I helped her get the food out. It went much better for my kids than if we had arrived on time." And Judith should know, she is a 3-time mom. If you and your progeny are going to a gathering where there will be other kids, this little trick benefits your tots, too. No child wants to hear, "Now, Rachel, go play with that rambunctious mob of kids over there." Arriving early is especially good advice for shy people. As a recovered shy myself, I know how arriving early goes against the grain. My mantra used to be, slip in late and sneak out early. Shies, I beseech you, try going to a party early just once. You will see how much more comfortable the whole party will be. Being unfashionably early also inspired another little trick. Have you ever stood at the sidelines wishing your outfit matched the wallpaper so no one would notice you? Or worse, been trapped alone in the middle of a laughing, talking throng with a drink in a plastic cup? When a partying passerby smiles at you, you assume she's smirking out of sympathy because you have no one to talk to. A friend of mine, Ebony, and I once arrived fashionably, but not beneficially, late to a gathering. Both she and I only knew about 3 other guests, although fortunately not the same ones. Walking in the door and confronting the unfamiliar crowd, I had an epiphany. I asked Ebony to introduce me to absolutely everyone she knew, and I would do the same for her. In addition, we agreed to introduce each other to anyone we met at the party. It worked beautifully. Little trick number 21. Make a cross-introduction pact. If you don't know many people at a party, make this pact with a buddy. Friend, I'll introduce you to everybody I know or meet, and you do the same for me. You might think this is obvious and will happen naturally, but I assure you, unless you sign a verbal treaty, it probably won't. Using this little trick, you will eventually meet everyone there. Do the arithmetic. I couldn't, but a mathematics professor, drawing on actuarial calculus, combinations, and probabilities, did it for me, and assured me it was true. You will eventually meet everyone there. How to meet people in an unusual way. At the beginning of a party, people will be straggling in, one by one or two by two. Some of the loners will zip toward their friends like metal shavings to a magnet. These folks are not your target for this little trick. The twosomes and threesomes and foursomes who strut in confidently are not either. Some people entering alone, however, will creep in with that pasted-on smile that reveals anything from minor insecurity to major terror. Surprise these folks by giving them a big smile as they enter. They will figure that you either know them or you are dazzled by their magnificence. Either misunderstanding melts the snow and shovels a clear path right to your vicinity. When they arrive, they may not have the self-assurance to actually put their hand out and introduce themselves, but they will welcome your doing the deed. Think about it. If you were shivering in the doorway of a room full of strangers, wouldn't you want someone's smile to warm you? Little trick number 22. Smile at individuals entering alone. The minute they walk in the door of a party, give loners a sincere smile, the crow's feet kind that reaches your eyes. If they come over to you immediately, say, "Oh, you look just like a good friend of mine. In fact, when you entered, I thought that's who it was. By the way, my name is," and introduce yourself. Even if they don't make a beeline directly toward you, be assured, like moths being drawn to a flame, your warmth will make them want to meet you. Some of you may think that that little trick was wacky. I assure you it has been road-tested by friends who have generously agreed to be guinea pigs for my perverse research. Are you skeptical about it? Well, a friend of mine, Donna Vincent from New Jersey, is currently dating one of her doorway victims. She later told him what she did, and he doesn't mind at all. In fact, he proudly recounts the tale to his friends. How to never look lost and lonely at a gathering. At one time or another, most people have one of the top 5 recurring nightmares: falling in space, failing a test, running and getting nowhere, being menaced by a monster, and getting caught naked in public. But practically everyone has this daymare. You attend a gathering where guests are laughing, drinking, and making merry. All the while you are standing alone, looking forlorn and lonely. You fear that everyone thinks you are stupid, desperate, fraught with anxiety, and craving human contact. You may remember my friend Sammy from my audiobook, How to Talk to Anyone. He introduced me to a bizarre technique that has the power to rescue you from the lonely among the crowd syndrome. An organization I had spoken for invited me to an anniversary party and said I could bring a friend. Now, Sammy isn't exactly my type. He's a little rough around the edges, but he's got street smarts, and he's a lot of fun. Besides, I hadn't seen him in a while. When I invited him, I warned him he probably wouldn't know anyone there. Sammy didn't mind. He said, "Lil, the combination of you, free grub, and a couple of beers is irresistible." I think he meant it as a compliment. The party was in full swing when he arrived. I spotted Sammy at the doorway and signaled him over. As he leisurely wound his way through the crowd, he waved at a few people across the room and gave them a big grin. By the time he got to me, I was dumbfounded. I said, "Sammy, I had no idea you knew so many people here." I don't," he shrugged. "But, oh, the waving bit, I've been using that old trick for years." "You mean you're waving at strangers as if you know them? Don't they think you're batty?" He said, "all that waving and smiling makes me feel as confident as a peacock. Besides, I'm not waving to real people. I'm waving to empty spaces between them. Nobody can tell. They think it's somebody standing behind them or next to them. If I see somebody I like, though, sometimes I'll wave at the real person. Come on, Sammy, they'll think you're nuts. Nah, they won't. They think it's their fault and they should know me. Either that or they assume they're the only one I made a mistake on, and I really do know all those other people. The whole scheme sounded outrageous to me, until I saw how well it worked. A couple of people he'd waved to gravitated like sheep to Sammy the Shepherd. So did some social climbers who had seen Mr. Popularity entering. These determined folks just had to know anybody who knew everybody, and Sammy sure looked like he did. Little trick number 23. Wave to imaginary friends. When you face a daunting swarm of strangers, don't stop at the door with that terrified, "Oh no, I don't know anyone here" expression, and then slip in with the speed of a handicapped snail. Glide right in and gleefully wave either between bodies at imaginary people or at a real person across the room. It gets you into the crowd looking popular and confident, and it makes you feel popular and confident. Additionally, when you go up to people, they will be pleased that such a popular partygoer has chosen to speak to them. How to ask great conversation starter questions. Getting a good conversation going with strangers at a party can be like starting a car in below freezing temperatures. It takes a couple of attempts before it's really up and running. If you've ever found yourself in a situation where no subject seems to turn the engine over, try the next few tips. When you are speaking with a couple, whether they are on their first date or married 50 years, a guaranteed heartwarmer is this: how did you two first meet? After giggles or gales of laughter, you will see the joy in their eyes as they recount their first rendezvous. Some of the stories you'll hear are surprisingly R-rated. It is delightful to hear the over-60 set confess to their shameful, by the standards of their day, first encounters. The second query is quite simple. The perfect time to pose this question is soon after you have learned your new acquaintance's line of work. Simply ask, "What is your typical day like?" It throws the ball in his court, so you can just sit back and listen. Ask your friends this question, too. They'll be delighted you care. Two other surefire conversation igniters are, how did you decide you wanted to become a, whatever their job is? And why did you choose the name of the city to live in? How and why questions are great words to kickstart a conversation and get it humming. Little trick number 24. Ask never-fail fun conversation starters. Stop for a second. Think back to how you and your significant other met. Wouldn't you enjoy telling the tale? Likewise, wouldn't you be pleased that someone cared enough about your typical day to ask? Use these conversation starters with new acquaintances. If you need more material, throw in a few how and why questions about their life. I still regret that I missed my big chance to ask that electroplater, phrenologist, and erection coordinator, what is your average day like? How to get away from nonstop talkers. Have you ever known people whose idea of a conversation is a filibuster? You fantasize them suddenly coming down with a case of lockjaw, but no such luck. Say you're at a gathering, and one of these non-stop talkers decides to hold you hostage. There are other people you want or should talk to, but escape seems hopeless. Your left and right brain have a conference to decide how to handle it. Your right brain says, "I could pretend I have to make a phone call." Left brain says, "No, he'll never fall for that hackneyed old song and dance." Right brain, "I know. I'll say I have to go talk to a friend." Left brain, "You've got to be kidding. He'll see through it in a heartbeat." Right brain, "Okay, so I'll say I need to go get another drink." Left brain, dummy, your glass is already full." Right brain, "Well, I'll gulp it down and say I have to get another." Left brain, "Then you'll look like old Guzzleguts. Besides, you'll get wasted. Think harder." Well, here is how to get rid of those hardcore bores. Extreme talkers, call for extreme measures. If it's a fairly crowded room, count on imaginary friends to get you out of this stressful situation. While Time Hogger is talking your ear off, wave to an imaginary person over his shoulder. Then turn back to Big Mouth and say, "Excuse me, you were saying?" Let him drone on for another 20 seconds. Then peek over his shoulder again. This time, pretend you are annoyed by your pushy friend who's signaling you from behind his back. The third time you look over Time Hogger's shoulder, say, "Excuse me, a friend is saying he must tell me something right now. I'll catch up with you later." If appropriate, a friendly touch on the arm substantiates your sincerity. And then disappear into the crowd. It sounds far-fetched, but I promise you that it works. I have never had a big mouth turn around to see precisely who is signaling me. If your conscience doesn't let you pull off that ploy, here is a more honest approach. Actually, it's my all-time favorite way to tackle this situation. Suppose you really were talking to a good friend, but you knew you must meet other people at the gathering. You'd probably say, "Hey, girlfriend," or guy friend, "I love talking to you, but we really should meet some other people now." To escape a bore, give her the formal version of this. Tell her, "I really am enjoying talking to you, but we should probably mingle now." She may be just as happy as you to do that. Or, if you really want to lay it on thick, say, "I should let you go now. I know there are other people who would like to talk to you. We can catch up later." Fat chance. Little trick 25. Pretend someone is signaling you over their shoulder. Whether your party goal is finding new business, love, friendship, or just some fun, do not let anyone monopolize your time. Either escape, with the help of an imaginary friend, or be, well, almost honest and tell him that you both should mingle. You and a lot of other interesting people have put too much effort into going to the event to get hijacked by an extreme talker. Part 4. 6 little tricks to be a cool communicator. How to turn someone down while retaining his or her affection. Say someone calls to invite you to a business event, a barbecue, a beer bust, a 2-person get-together, or any situation that you would rather eat worms than attend. If you don't want to offend the asker, employ the following little trick to allay his suspicion about your lack of enthusiasm. When he first asks you, do not give excuses and refuse. Predict his emotions in this situation. What will happen if you turn him down immediately? In addition to his regret that you cannot come, he will fear that you are rejecting him personally. Your refusal gives his self-esteem a flogging. So here's the plan. Accept the invitation gleefully. Turn your enthusiasm dial to high. If it's a party, ask directions to the fabulous affair. Ask if there's anything you can bring. Ask the dress code. If it's just the two of you getting together, ask about the restaurant, the film, the whatever, with exuberance. Stretch it out as long as he's loving it. Whether you realize it or not, you have now given the inviter an important part of the pleasure of your company. You make him feel acknowledged, accepted, and approved of. Additionally, you bestow upon him the bliss of babbling about the upcoming event. Now, at this point you have 2 choices. Number 1, say, "Oh, let me put that right down in my calendar." Make the sound of ruffled papers. Then return to the phone crestfallen. "Oh, no, that's the date I have to—" You fill in the blank. "I am so disappointed." He will be too, but not nearly as much as if you turned him down immediately. Choice number 2. Accept with pleasure. Then wait an appropriate length of time before calling again. On this call, tell him that you didn't see something or other on your schedule, and sadly you can't make it. Do not feel guilty. You have rescued him from paranoia, as well as given him a valued gift, your apparent esteem. Little trick number 26. Sound excited about it, and then give your regrets later. When a not-so-liked person extends an invitation to a not-so-liked event, accept it with enthusiasm. Get her bubbling about the date. Only later do you, quote, discover, regretfully, that you can't make it. Manipulation? Yes, for a very good cause. Preserving someone's self-esteem, a quality everyone needs and deserves. Savvy singles, you have already probably realized how to use this little trick in dating. Ladies, the previous little trick is especially important if you want him to ask you out again. Let's say a man you sincerely do want to see again asks you out for a particular evening, but you really are busy that night. Do not turn him down right away. Never underestimate the fragility of the male ego when it comes to women. Once burned, he may never ask you again. Accept his invitation eagerly. Now he knows that you do want to go out with him. Shortly after, be devastated to discover that you had something on your schedule. Bat your eyelashes as you suggest, but some other time? How to make people like you by talking behind their backs. For a few years I was a flight attendant. A Swedish girl named Tova Svensson was the most popular flight attendant I flew with, and we shared many experiences over the years. She and I went to refresher trainings at the airport together. We ran into flight crews around the terminal together, and occasionally we double-dated on layovers. The one thing that puzzled me about this poised Swedish lady was that occasionally she would speak a few sentences in a much louder voice. Then her volume would go back down to normal. It seemed strange, so I decided to monitor it. The next time she said something rather loudly, we were leaving a training class at the hangar. As we went through the door, she said, "Yeah, that instructor is really good. I got a lot out of the class." At that high volume, of course, the instructor overheard it. Tova strikes again now with her full volume comment number 2. Walking away from a colleague we had just talked to in the terminal, she said, "She is really nice. Have you ever flown with her?" The other flight attendant couldn't help but overhear it. I wondered, did she speak that high volume on purpose? My suspicions were proven the following week when we went to a party on a layover. On the way out, the host waved goodbye to us from his doorstep. 10 yards away, Tova said, loudly, "Yeah, that was really a fun party." Naturally, the party giver overheard it. Very clever little trick, Tova. She made it a point to compliment the teacher, the flight attendant, and the party giver, supposedly to me, but slightly louder so the person being complimented could hear it. Now I know one reason that she was so popular. Little trick number 27. Let people overhear your compliment. The only thing nicer than hearing a compliment is overhearing it. Your parents probably told you, "Don't talk about people behind their backs." Let us change that to, "Do talk about people behind their back, if you're saying nice things about them. Just be sure to say it loud enough for them to hear it." Have you ever had a great conversation with someone, but you don't remember what she said? In fact, you don't even remember what you were discussing, or even what you said. You just know you felt relaxed whenever you were speaking with her. It just might have something to do with the next little trick. How to make everyone comfortable speaking with you. While I was riding my bicycle one Sunday morning, a German shepherd decided to amuse itself by chasing me. Peeling away at full speed, I frantically looked back to see how close he was. I won the race, but wound up in a hospital bed with a twisted neck. That evening, a man I was seeing and a friend of his came over to visit me. Scott sat right by my side, and his buddy sat at the foot of the bed. I couldn't turn my head to look at Scott directly, but my peripheral vision told me that Scott looked uncharacteristically annoyed. I figured it was just sympathy for me and dismissed it. Cut to the following Saturday. We were having dinner at a restaurant, and the server delivered her entire dramatic monologue about the specials to Scott. Afterward I groused, "Well, she could have looked my way just once." "Come on, Lil," he said accusatorily. "You didn't look at me once when you were in the hospital, but you sure couldn't take your eyes off my friend." "I couldn't look at you, Scotty," I said. "You were sitting right beside me. You were a pain in the neck. I'm sorry, a physical pain in the neck, I mean, to talk to. But your friend was in my direct line of vision. Scott, you should have put your chair where I could see you without twisting my neck." This experience made me exquisitely aware of something we seldom consider. A comfortable conversation involves more than just your words and body language. It includes where you and your conversational partners are sitting and how comfortable they are. When entertaining, most people would ensure that a guest chair isn't too hard or that bright sunlight from a window isn't blinding them, but that is often where it stops. To fully enjoy conversation with you, people must experience no physical discomfort or any stress caused by your relative positions. For example, if you want a friendly exchange in the office, don't ask someone to sit on the other side of the desk from you. That can be intimidating. Put a chair by the side of your desk instead. If the two of you will be talking in a conference room, let the other person enter first and choose the chair. If you are one person in a couple conversing with someone, don't sit so far apart that the listener has to swivel her head back and forth like watching a tennis game. Even if you are sitting on a couch with someone side by side, slide your bottom an appropriate distance away so he can turn to look at you without straining his neck. This is especially important if you are chatting with someone in a wheelchair. Do not stand where she will get a sore neck looking up at you. Sit on her level or stand far enough away so that you are comfortably in her line of sight. Be especially compassionate when conversing with elderly people. Every decade, rotating their heads becomes more difficult for them. Also, they probably don't want to sit on a low couch where getting up is a struggle. When chatting with a 70-plus set, offer them a higher chair with a straight back and in a place where they can see your lips in case they are hard of hearing. Think of your relative seating positions like feng shui, the ancient Chinese art of arranging furniture and other elements to eliminate discordance. Choose your seat and theirs to obtain optimum comfort for all. After all, if the Chinese do it for their dead, you can do it for your living friends. Little trick number 28. Assure your conversation partner's physical comfort. When you enter someone's home or office, don't just plop down anywhere. Pick your perch with care. When entertaining, offer seats to people keeping in mind your guests' ages, abilities, status, and their sex. Relative positioning affects the encounter much more than you can imagine. Now, when it comes to talking with males, there is more to consider. Sisters, when I was growing up, psychologists, psychiatrists, and feminists tried to convince us that men and women were alike. In the big nature versus nurture turmoil, the majority cast their votes on the nurture side. But in this so-called century of enlightenment, neurosurgeons have ascertained otherwise. Their finely tuned instruments point to precise clumps of neurons that, while not exactly pink or blue, do indicate gender proclivities. One of those proclivities, for a male, is that sitting where he can't see the door is disquieting for him at the least, devastating at the most. Perhaps it comes from watching too many cowboy movies. If the gunslinging dude wearing the white hat didn't face the saloon door, the bad guy in the black hat could blast him in the back. Mafia members who weren't facing restaurant doors learned that the hard way. Whatever the origin, sharp people today are savvy about the gender sitting game, and they play it skillfully. Ladies, let's say you walk into a restaurant and have to choose a table. Be sure to leave the best seat for him. Now, the best seat, in the male estimation, is not the one with the nicest view, nor the warmest in the winter or the coolest in the summer. If you want a happy puppy at your table, give him the one facing the door. Little trick 29. Let the dude face the door. They haven't isolated the specific gene that makes men jumpy sitting with their backs to the door, but trust the inexplicable, indisputable truth. Sisters, upon entering the restaurant, the meeting, the whatever, go for the seat that puts your back to the door. Our neurons can take it. Theirs can't. Wait, it gets more complicated. While the following tips are generalizations, of course, put your tongue in your cheek and keep your eyes open to see who wants whom to sit where. Ladies, would you believe that where a man invites you to sit can reveal how he feels about you? And gentlemen, did you know that the chair she instinctively chooses indicates her sentiments about you? You probably know that sitting across from one another creates a distance. But ladies, did you know that sitting or being invited to sit on his left signifies, let's just be friends and nothing more? But sitting on his right hints the opposite. Why? Because a man always wants his woman on the right. I know, I don't get it either. It's a guy thing. Now, gentlemen, between you it gets competitive. Fellows, the facing the door dilemma is trickier for you, because to make your male colleague, friend, or boss more relaxed, you must turn your testosterone meter down and overcome your discomfort sitting with your back to the door. We women will never understand it. When it's purely social, girlfriends seldom care where they sit, unless there is a desirable male in the room. How to escape bores that you run into without hurting their feelings. See if the following scene is familiar to you. It's 10 o'clock on a glorious Saturday morning, cool and crisp, 70 degrees, 0 humidity, and a cloudless robin's egg blue sky. An occasional gust of wind rustles the leaves, tingles your skin, but within seconds the warm sun's rays bake it away. As you stroll along the street, you're humming U2's "It's a Beautiful Day, Don't Let It Get Away." Then, blam! You spot a nascent disaster. That bore who always talks your ear off. He can compress the most words into the smallest idea of any man you know. He is the last person on earth you would want to squander 1 second of this heavenly day on. But alas, he has spotted you. It's too late. "Hey, how you doing?" he waves. "Pretty good, nice to see you," you speed say as you pick up your pace and pass him. "Where'd you go on vacation?" he calls back. Darn it! Now you must turn back and chat with him for a bit. At this point, most people's bodies belie their mock-friendly words. Like a horse backing away from a cruel handler, they prance backward. Their bucking is obvious and their snorts almost audible. Then they gallop off, leaving their acquaintance feeling like trodden hay. Do not do that to people. Don't ruthlessly perform the rude breakaway dance. Just because you're still facing them, you think they don't notice you're backing away? It is as obvious as you're thumbing your nose at them. Instead, use the following little trick, which speeds you toward salvation and your destination. It also makes the bore admire you. Sound impossible? Here's the plan. When you spot the windbag who wants to snare you into conversation, pick up your speed so he will see you walking briskly as though you are late somewhere. But when you are almost within speaking distance to your, quote, friend, feign happy surprise and come to a screeching halt. Greet him enthusiastically. Do not look rushed. Do not step back. Do not start prancing in place. Train your face to say, "I'm really looking forward to yakking it up with you." Confirm this with a, "I've got all the time in the world for you" demeanor. Then do yak it up for 45 seconds. That is the minimum amount of time to qualify it as a bona fide conversation. Look laid back and go nice and slow during your convivial chat. Then, and only then, look at your watch. Appear disappointed and explain regretfully that you are late for a meeting, a date, an appointment, a funeral, whatever. Now, here is the most important part. Walk away at a leisurely pace, but when you get about 10 feet from him, break into a canter. Race away as though you were making up for the time you lost because you really preferred to stay with him and chat. He's thinking to himself, "What a guy! He was really rushed, but he wanted to talk to me so much that he risked being late." Now this screeching to a halt, micro-chatting, then racing away like hell little trick is also effective in the corporate halls of our great work-obsessed country. Not only does it get you away from the office bore you encounter in the hall, it makes you look like you are rushing to get your work done, too. Little trick 30. Walk away slowly, then let them see you sprint. A quick recap on how to escape a bore in 5 easy steps. 1. Wave enthusiastically when you first spot her. 2. Stop and chat, unrushed, for 45 seconds. 3. Look at your watch and appear devastated. 4. Walk away slowly. 5. After a few yards, break into a sprint and run like hell. Now she feels valued, you retain her respect, and it didn't take any longer than that insulting white rabbit breakdance. How to read people's minds. About 6 months ago, I was insecure about a chapter I had written for this audiobook, so I asked a good friend, Anne Terrego, to read it. Anne is a warm-hearted person, so even if the chapter made her gag, she would never tell me. I gave her the manuscript and strategically sat in another chair across the room. While I pretended to read the newspaper, I was furtively peering over the paper at Anne's face. Her deadpan expression confirmed my suspicion. In spite of her later compliments, I knew my chapter was the pits. A few weeks later, I was telling the Anne story to the son of a friend of mine. Jonathan Rahm is a trainer and talented horse whisperer in Sullivan County, New York. Now, a horse whisperer reads horses' feelings by watching their ear positions, tail movements, their respiratory rate, their nostrils, and other signals that riders with shattered kneecaps obviously missed. When I finished, he said, "Yeah, it's easier to read a person than a horse." I said, "You've got to be kidding, Jonathan. People can fake their emotions. Horses can't." He responded, "Sure, Leo, people can fake it when they think they're being watched. But watch them when they think they aren't, when they're off guard. That's when you get the real story. I like to think of it as being a people whisperer." This insight by a 26-year-old stunned me with the obvious truth. Lips can lie while speaking, but lips tell the truth when they think no one is looking. I researched the subject and discovered that science is now paying some pretty serious attention to those fleeting, split-second expressions that slip across our faces thousands of times each day. Daniel McNeil, author of The Face, A Natural History, wrote, "In the last 20 years, we've learned more about the communicative power of the face than in the previous 20 millennia. By connecting facial expression to brain activity with extraordinary precision, researchers are discovering that, in a sense, it is possible to read someone's mind. And when you learn how to do it too, you become an exquisitely better communicator. Just imagine how much more persuasive and sensitive you'll be when you know what people are thinking. Let's say you are at an office meeting and your team leader proposes a change in direction for the current project, but you don't agree. Glance at your colleagues' faces. Do they have a microscopic hint of a frown, or are their lips and eyes softer? If the latter, you know that you would be the lone voice against the change. Therefore, even if you do speak up, you won't be successful. When watching a DVD with a friend, momentarily take your eyes off the screen and sneak a peek at his face. No mystery there. You can easily determine if your friend is enjoying the film or not. You can track everyone's emotions pretty accurately from his or her subtle, supposedly unseen expressions. Here's an example of how subtle. The next sunny weekend that you are at the beach, watch the sunbathers on sandy towels soaking up the rays. They're not smiling, but if you focus on their mouths, you'll see an ever so slight lifting at the corners. Then, while driving to work on Monday morning, glance at other drivers in a traffic jam. Lifted lips are as rare as a solar eclipse. The difference in facial expressions is more obvious when you have access to both at the same time. At an airport, gaze first at the faces of people waiting for their loved ones to come out the exit. Now, compare them with the expressions of limousine drivers holding a sign with their unknown passenger's name on it. The first expression is not a smile, it is just a minuscule lifting of the muscles on either side of the mouth. The second expression is not a frown, the limousine drivers simply have a deadpan expression. There are many social benefits to developing this sensitivity. Gentlemen, wouldn't it be nice to know whether your date who says she likes baseball is really enjoying the game? If she is straight-faced, don't invite her to another one or you might get turned down, and then you'd wonder why. Ladies, watch your husband's face while he's driving to dinner at the in-laws. Now you'll get the real story on how he feels about it. Kids are naturals at face reading. Did you ever see a kid take his eyes off Mom's expression when she's reading his report card? Incidentally, this little trick has already benefited you. Why? If it hadn't been for Anne's bored expression, you too would be subjected to listening to that tedious chapter that I deleted due to her deadpan expression. Little trick 31. Read their lips when they are not speaking. Like a pilot scanning the horizon for other planes, make it a habit to scan the faces in any group. Pay special attention to the corners of their lips. When you are able to read their minds, your emotional prediction meter shoots straight up. Therefore, your skill in communicating will almost double. No exaggeration. People are who they are when they think no one is looking. Part 5. 6 little tricks to give your email today's personality and tomorrow's professionalism. How to make people smile when they see that the email is from you. You have probably heard the story of Ivan Petrovich Pavlov's pooches salivating at the sound of a bell. You may not, however, heard of his other slobbering dogs with the chili powder. I find that experiment more memorable, and you might too, so let's go with that canine study. Pavlov originally served his canine subjects gourmet meals coated with chili powder. After a while, he denied them their Epicurean delights and just sprinkled some chili powder around. Yet for a long time, his dogs continued to drool at the smell of chili powder. It's called being conditioned. Now, you needn't condition your email recipients to drool when they see an email messages from you, but nor do you want them to shudder. A few years ago, I took care of my 2 young nieces for the week while their parents took a long-awaited and much-deserved vacation. I had to leave for an overnight trip, but a reliable friend, Fiona, offered to stay with them at my place. The next morning at the hotel, just before my speech, I received an email from Fiona. The subject line was, "Accident." My fingers shook so violently I had trouble opening the message. It read, "Oh, Lil, I feel so awful. I knocked over that beautiful green vase you have in the living room, and it shattered. I tried to glue it together again, but it will never be the same." Nor would my feelings for Fiona, not consciously, that is, and not because of the vase, but because of the jolt she'd given me. She obviously didn't predict my emotion, the terror I would feel after reading her subject line, fearing that something terrible had happened to my nieces. Now, every time I see Fiona's name in the from field, I involuntarily shudder. She inadvertently conditioned me to feel fear, just seeing that the message is from her. Didn't she realize that I'd freak out just reading the word accident when my precious little nieces Allison and Julia were in her care? Think about it. How would you feel getting an email from your boss with the following subject line? "Meet me in my office at 9 tomorrow morning." Even if in the body of the message your boss had written he wanted to give you a raise, the momentary jolt would have already done its damage. No matter what good tidings your messages bear, predict the emotions that recipients will feel reading your subject line. Those fleeting pricks of pain that you gave them are very hard to erase. Little trick 32. Avoid scary subject lines. Be careful that your subject line couldn't be misunderstood and then inadvertently foreshadow something negative. No matter what pleasantries follow in your message, it's too late. Your recipient has subconsciously anchored you to unpleasantness. Forever after, just seeing your name in the from field reinvokes that painful jolt. The opposite is true, too. If your boss's subject line had read, "You got a raise," that would translate into warm feelings for him or her. Always anchor yourself to pleasure by writing upbeat subject lines. For example, if someone has given you a gift, write "fabulous gift" as the subject. If you are writing someone to say how much you enjoyed her party, write "great party" as the subject. Why make your recipients wait until they get into the message to smile? When I sent the manuscript of this audiobook to my editor, her first message back was, "Love it." Unfortunately, it turns out she had only read the table of contents. But her subject line thrilled me so much that I kept it going on our messages for months, even when she was scolding me about a part she didn't like. You may ask, what if the subject thread is already established? If the same old subject line has been going back and forth, leave it as it is. When appropriate, though, add an upbeat comment after it in parentheses. Let's say your team at the office has been working on a project for the patent company, and the email thread has been "the patent project." Now it is successfully over. Keep the original subject and then add the "make them smile" part. Right. Ray, the patent project. Parentheses, great job, everybody. Do you ever watch reruns of the classic sitcom Seinfeld? Kramer's scenes are so funny that audiences laugh the second he skids in the door, before he even says a word. Do the same thing with your subject lines. Check your sent mailbox as soon as you get back to your computer. Scan your old subject lines. How many of them would make your recipient smile before opening the message? Little trick number 33. Write "make them smile" subject lines. Starting today, write only upbeat subject lines. If the subject is already established, season it occasionally with something pleasant in parentheses. After you have sent a few of these "make 'em smile" subject lines, you have conditioned people to have a warm response just seeing that the message is from you. I've often heard people say that email is impersonal and that you can't tell much about someone just from their written words. I beg to differ. Naturally, your message doesn't reveal as much as your voice or your body language, but your words are like a lighthouse signaling everyone about your self-image. So this next section tells you how to avoid sounding egotistical in your email. People who reside in mental institutions use the word "I" 12 times more than non-residents. Ergo, it figures that the fewer times you use the word "I," the saner you sound. In conversation, it is certainly a good idea to avoid saying "I" too many times. Once uttered, though, it becomes just another sound wave blown away by the breezes. In email, however, that big black "I" stays plastered on your recipient's screen. Some people start so many sentences with the word "I" that their message looks like it has a left-hand border. Wait a minute, Leah, you're thinking, everybody talks about themselves. Their thoughts, actions, feelings, suggestions. That's what messages are all about. I say you're right. In fact, here is a typical casual message to a friend. "Hi, Rick. I really had a good time at your party last night at the club, and I met lots of interesting people. I hope you and your wife can join us next week for dinner. I think you will enjoy Sasha's cooking." Do you notice how an "I" starts each sentence? They're repetitive, not to mention self-focused, even though the writer is supposedly reaching out to his friend. See how much better this sounds. And the only thing different is that you deleted the I's. "Hi, Rick. Really had a good time at your party last night at the club and met lots of interesting people. Hope you and your wife can join us next week for dinner. Think you'll enjoy Sasha's cooking." Did you hear that there isn't one "I" in the entire message? So what's an emailer to do? If your dearly deceased third-grade grammar teacher heard the following advice, she would turn over in her grave. If she's still alive, it would drive her to it. But it's simple to do, and it sounds way less egotistical. Little trick number 34. Delete most of the I's in your messages. Tweak your informal emails and wipe out the word I as many times as you can. You will sound less self-centered and therefore more likable. To prove it, open any email message you have recently written. Delete practically every I, and the message will probably stand on its own. Everybody will like it better, except grammarians. In spots where it sounds strange to drop the I, simply put your recipient's name before it. Example, write, Rick, I really hope you and your wife can join us. If you'd like to take it a step further, switch the words around and start as many sentences as you can with the word you. Hi, Rick. You really gave a great party last night at the club, and everyone enjoyed it. You invited lots of interesting people. You and your wife can join us for dinner next week, right? You'll enjoy Sasha's cooking. It works in business email, too. Substituting you for I makes business communications friendlier. See which you like better. Dear Mr. Jones, we received your order for 2 gizmos yesterday. I will email you as soon as they come in, and we will send them out the day after. That's average, the way people usually write messages. Here's the little trick 34 way to write it. It makes the customer feel important. Dear Mr. Jones, your order for 2 gizmos arrived yesterday. You will be notified by email as soon as they come in, and you will receive them the day after. If your messages that make them feel important pile up, you've got yourself a loyal customer. How to sound like you have a crystal ball in your email messages. Before every flight, airline pilots do a pre-takeoff check of how much fuel is in the tank and whether the wing flaps move freely. Likewise, before your email messages take off into cyberspace, perform a relationship check. Practically all civilized folk make a gratuitous, almost obligatory reference to the recipient in their opening sentence, such as, I hope you had a good weekend, or they extend their good wishes for holidays past, present, or future. That is as original as a white wall. But thanks to the wonders of the World Wide Web, you can now make your messages more relevant. Let's say you are writing to someone in a different state. Check the local weather report. Did she just have a big snowstorm? Write, Hi Brenda, how are you surviving the blizzard? A wildfire? Natalie, I do hope that horrible blaze didn't get anywhere near your neighborhood. A heat wave? Hey girl, did you melt yet? The recipients will never guess that weather.com did the work for you. Keep it on your favorites list. Before writing, also see if there's any big news in their burg. Tack a world map on your wall. Now throw a dart at it. Wherever it lands, no matter how tiny the town, something has happened there. You have never seen a banner headline, even on the One-Horse Herald, saying, Nothing happened here today. Is a celebrity visiting their boonies? Did the hometown boy genius win 3rd place in the state spelling bee? What about the grand opening of the new Museum of 20th Century Beer Bottle Caps? Your reader will never suspect the obvious, that your web search gave you the skinny. You've only spent a few seconds to score big with them. You can actually narrow it down even further, and the recipient doesn't have to be from out of town to use this little trick. Your search engine can surreptitiously swoop down on every neighborhood and dig up any dirt that any freaked-out blogger has written about their hood. I once received an email from an uptown colleague who wrote, I hope no falling bricks hit you. He was referring to a freshly fallen building in my lower Manhattan neighborhood. This is a common and unnoteworthy event in the Big Bagel, unless it's yours or your neighbor's building. His knowledge and concern impressed me. Little trick number 35. Do a news and weather check before clicking send. Take just a few seconds to enhance or create a relationship with your recipient. Send your search engine into cyberspace like a Saint Bernard, and before you blink, it will be back with something better than a barrel of brandy to boost your connection. It's a small investment for a big reward. Suppose you don't find any news from their corner of the world. All is not lost. Run a search through their messages that they sent you months ago. Then write opening lines like, "Zach, you never told me about your drive to Disneyland last year. Did the kids enjoy it?" Or, "Nora, how's that new little niece of yours doing? Get to spend much time with her?" Or, "Kaylee, did you ever discover the identity of your mystery admirer who sent you the rock candy? What did the dentist say?" Little trick number 36. Put memories in your messages. Take a diving expedition into previous messages from your intended recipient. Surface with some forgettable, to everybody but them, fact about their life, and then refer to it. They're thinking, "Wow, I must really be important to her. Look how she remembers the details of my life." Still didn't find anything? Don't give up. The personal touch can make all the difference in a message. Excavate any other element you can refer to. Check the time he sent the message. Refer to it. Did he send you a business communication at 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. from the office? End your message with, "Go home, Christopher, you're working too hard." She sent it to you at the wee hours? Jokingly chastise her. "You're burning the midnight oil again, Madison. Go get some beauty sleep." Although don't imply that she needs it, of course. How to sign your messages in the new millennium. Email's official birthday is October 1971. Can you believe, these many years after the dawning of this universal technology, that we are still struggling with how to sign our messages? Should we write "Regards," "Sincerely," "Best," "Thanks," our name, initials, nothing? Babies born pre-Windows are totally bewildered. Those weaned on floppy disks are just as baffled. When Generation Nexters ask their grandmothers, "Granny, what are letters?" she will explain that they were email messages that were handwritten or keyboarded on paper. When she tells her grandchildren that every one of them had to be signed with "Sincerely yours," "Cordially yours," "Respectfully yours," and the like, they will stare at her in disbelief. It finally dawned upon email writers that using those valedictions mimicked archaic typewritten letters too much. Many shortened it to just one word, "Sincerely" or "Cordially." But now we're even struggling to do away with that in more casual communicating. Some people ask, "Well, what about just signing your name?" The majority answers, "That sounds callous." So what to do? Let's consult the shrink from cyberspace. For the answer to the burning question, how shall we sign our emails, Earthlings must summon the great IT man in the sky to our planet. He is the cyber psychiatrist who can answer perplexing psychological and ethical questions that come with the new technology. The crowd stands, straining their necks to see Cybershrink's spaceship arrive. The moment he disembarks, there is a great crescendo of, "How should we sign our email messages?" Like all psychiatrists, he answers their question with a question. "Why must you have a closing to your message?" "Well, to pay deference to the receiver," someone shouts out. "It's so that our messages have a friendlier ending," calls out another. "Yes," Cybershrink nods. He then points his finger in the air. "What is the sweetest sound in the English language to someone?" "Their name?" the group asks. He strokes his goatee and adds, "Yes, and that, my dear Earthlings, is how you should sign your email." A few of the more confident in the crowd cry out, "Well, what do their names have to do with my signature?" Cybershrink again responds with a question. "The whole point of your signature phrase is to show respect and close your message in a friendly way, right?" The throng nods in unison. So simply end your message with a warm sentence that includes their name. It is even better if you can make their name the very last word in the body of the message. That gives them what I believe you humans call the fuzzies and the warms. Then your name isn't necessary. In all but the most formal messages, he adds, you can put your initials to signal that that is the end. Alternatively, if you are especially attached to your first name, I condone that as well. The grateful assembly gasps, "Yes, yes, thank you." The wise guru then climbs back aboard his spaceship. The crowd looks up to the sky and waves as Cybershrink vanishes back into the universe where all our email gets lost. Little trick number 37. Sign your messages with their name. Both your personal and professional email messages sound warmer when you work the recipient's name into the last sentence. They know who it's from anyway. Reading the sweetest sound in the English language to them as the closing of your message creates a subliminal sense of respect and friendliness. Here are some examples. Thanks so much for your help, Elisa. I'm looking forward to talking with you, Alfred. Lauren, it was great having dinner with you. Good going, Emma. You really impressed the client. It was great meeting you, John. Your initials, first name, or even nothing after such sentences suffice. Hearing their own name unexpectedly as the last word of your message makes them feel an instant connection with you. Part 6. 4 little tricks to make a big impression on your cell, aka phone. How to know when to email, when to phone. Marshall McLuhan, the great Canadian educator, philosopher, scholar, and communications theorist, wrote, "The form of a message embeds itself in the message, creating a symbiotic relationship by which the medium influences how the message is perceived." Well, happily somebody shortened that to, "The medium is the message." Mr. McLuhan never heard of email, but he would have said the same thing if he had. He also would have predicted the problem that most of us still struggle with. Should I phone him or email him? Shall I email her or phone her? In short, when is it more appropriate to phone, and when is it more appropriate to email? Some things are better said, others are better read. Sometimes, of course, it's obvious, but what about when it's not? Let's say you are staying at a friend's house while she is working on an important project out of town. You are watering the plants, walking the dog, and feeding her 10 goldfish. Sadly, one of them goes belly up. Oh dear, should I email her, you think? No, that's a little crass. Should I call her at the office? No, she's busy and might think I'm stupid to call her to the phone for one dumb little goldfish. After all, she does have 9 others. On the other hand, she might love those little ectotherms. And when she gets back, she'll be devastated. She'll scream at me, "Why didn't you tell me that Parnell passed away?" Shall I email or phone? Email or phone? Email or phone? Don't lose any sleep over it. There's a middle road. Figure out a time when you know the person is not going to be at the number you're calling, and leave a recorded message for him. Late at night is great for leaving a voicemail message at the office. Choose midday to leave a message at his home. Be sure, though, to start the message with something like, "I know you're busy and I didn't want to drag you to the phone. That's why I'm calling you while you're out of the office." If it's true, you can add, "There's no need to call me back." That demonstrates extreme respect for his time. Friends and lovers, you can use the same little trick. If, for personal reasons, you don't want to actually speak to your colleague or crush, leave an off-hours message. You can convey precisely the sentiment you wish. Note, this is not recommended for breaking up with someone. Hearing smiles or frowns in your voice is more effective than reading smiley faces, which, as you know, professional types tell us not to use. Leaving a phone message is more personal and actually less time-consuming than writing an email. And if it's a delicate or legal matter, you are not leaving an email trail. Little trick number 38. Leave a phone message when you know that they're out. When you don't want to drag someone to the phone, but you still prefer the personal touch, leave a phone message when she is not there. Between the lines, she'll know that you are doing it out of respect for her busy schedule. Just in case, however, tell her, "Harley, I'm calling after hours because I didn't want to pull you to the phone just for this, but," and then yada, yada, yada.